Welcome to Xanzer Survival. I'm Kyle, one of the adventurers here on the channel, alongside fellow adventurer Xander David. I tell stories and create documentaries about survival and exploration. Today we enter the harrowing world of extreme cave diving. If you enjoy it, subscribe, leave a like, and share your questions or comments. We're always happy to respond. Let's get into it. At 6:15 in the morning, Dave Shaw slipped beneath a pool of black water in South Africa. His plan was to reach the bottom of a submerged cave, complete 5 minutes of work, and begin an ascent that could take almost 12 hours. He carried a camera on his helmet. It recorded his light falling through an enormous chamber, with only a thin rope connecting him to the world above. 11 minutes later, he reached the bottom, roughly 270 meters down. His support diver, Don Shirley, entered 13 minutes after him. At 150 meters, Don looked down and saw something that should have been moving toward him. One light, completely still. Dave had survived this depth before. This time, he was not chasing a record. He was trying to keep a promise, bring a young diver home after 10 years in the dark. By the end of the operation, both men would reach the surface, but not in the way anyone had planned. This is the story of one of the most ambitious body recovery dives ever attempted and the invisible physical limit that turned a problem into a fatal trap. Boesmansgat, often called Bushman's Hole, does not look like the entrance to another world. It sits in the dry northern cape, surrounded by open land. From the rim, divers climb down a steep crater to what appears to be a small, quiet pool. Under that pool, the shape changes. A narrow opening drops like a chimney. Below about 60 meters, it opens into a chamber so large that a diver's most powerful light may not reach a wall. There is no horizon, no daylight, and almost no natural sense of up or down. The guideline becomes the map, the exit, and the only fixed point in a black void. Now place the bottom 270 meters below the surface, about 3 football fields, standing end to end. Down there, the pressure is roughly 27 times what we feel at sea level. A descent can take minutes. Returning safely takes hours because gases absorbed under pressure must be released slowly. Skip those decompression stops, and bubbles can form inside the body, damaging the brain, joints, lungs, and spinal cord. This was not simply deep diving, it was deep diving inside an overhead environment at altitude with no direct route to air. David John Shaw was 50 years old, an Australian, a husband, a father of 2, and an international airline pilot based in Hong Kong. Long before caves, he had built a life around controlled risk. He flew agricultural aircraft, worked with Mission Aviation Fellowship, and later piloted passenger jets for Cathay Pacific. He came to scuba unusually late. According to his family, he began after his son learned to dive, when Dave was in his early 40s, but he progressed with startling speed, from ordinary scuba to wrecks to caves to closed-circuit rebreathers and extreme depth. The pattern was familiar. Learn the system, master the procedure, then find the edge of what it could do. That matters because the easy version of this story paints him either as a fearless hero or as a reckless man who went too far. The people closest to him describe someone more complicated, charismatic, careful, intensely prepared, and deeply drawn to places almost nobody else could reach. As a pilot, checklists helped make danger manageable. In technical diving, he used the same instinct. He modified equipment, calculated gases, and planned failures. But a checklist can only control hazards you understand. At the bottom of Boesmansgat, the human respiratory system itself was close to becoming the weakest part of the machine. Normal scuba vents each exhaled breath into the water. A closed-circuit rebreather keeps most of that gas in a loop. It removes carbon dioxide with a chemical scrubber, measures oxygen, and adds only what the diver needs. For a very long, very deep dive, that efficiency is essential. The diluent gas can include helium, which reduces narcosis and is less dense than nitrogen. But no breathing mix escapes pressure. As a diver descends, every gas becomes denser. Moving it through hoses, valves, a scrubber, and the diver's own airways takes more effort. Think of breathing through a wide tube, then slowly making the air inside heavier while narrowing the tube. The diver can work harder, but eventually breathing harder stops moving proportionally more gas. and effort creates carbon dioxide. If the body cannot exhale that carbon dioxide fast enough, it accumulates in the blood, a condition called hypercapnia. The early signs can include breathlessness, anxiety, confusion, and loss of coordination. Severe hypercapnia can cause unconsciousness. This is crucial. A rebreather can still contain enough oxygen while its diver is losing the ability to ventilate. The danger may not announce itself with an empty tank. It can arrive as a feedback loop inside the body. On October 28, 2004, Shaw descended Boesmansgat on a modified rebreather. He reached 270 meters, set multiple depth records for a rebreather cave dive, and ran a line across the bottom. Then his light found a shape in the silt. It was Deon Dreyer, a 20-year-old South African diver who had disappeared in this cave in 1994. Searchers had never recovered him. 10 years later, Shaw had found his remains and some of his equipment at the bottom. Shaw could not bring him up on that dive. He had already exceeded the planned bottom time, and every extra minute at depth multiplied the decompression obligation above. So he left the bottom and began the long ascent. At 150 meters, after switching bailout cylinders, he wrote a message on a slate for Don Shirley. 270 m, found body. The entire dive lasted 9 hours and 40 minutes. Shaw later received precautionary recompression treatment for pain in his forearm, but the dive was still regarded as an extraordinary success. Yet in Shaw's own report, the record is almost a secondary detail. He noted that the media cared about the body, so did the police. Plans for a recovery began almost immediately. The record dive had answered one mystery. It had also created a promise. Deon Dreyer had been diving at about 70 meters on air when he was believed to have blacked out. His body sank beyond the reach of the recovery divers and eventually came to rest far below. For the next decade, his parents, Theo and Marie, returned to Boesmansgat and left flowers. The cave was a grave, but it was not closure. After Shaw surfaced in 2004, Theo met him. Dave told him he would bring Deon back. That decision is the emotional center of this story. Shaw was still an explorer, and repeating 270 meters would be another extreme achievement. But the mission was now attached to a family waiting at the surface. To most people, 10 years underwater might reduce a person to an object or a technical problem. To Deon's parents, he was still their son. Shaw understood that. His wife, Anne, later said she was anxious but reassured by how meticulously he planned. She also helped make the body bag he would carry to the bottom. The plan looked exact on paper, but it depended on one assumption, that the remains would behave the way the team expected when Shaw tried to move them. The recovery involved roughly 25 to 30 people: technical divers, police divers, surface support, medical personnel, and a dive coordinator. Every person had a time, a depth, and a task. Shaw would descend first. At the bottom, he allowed himself only 5 minutes. He would open the bag, place Deon inside, cut the remains free of the old equipment, and, only if time allowed, attach a separate line to that equipment. Don Shirley would enter exactly 13 minutes later and meet him on the ascent around 220 meters. Above them, other divers would form a relay. Decompression stops and gas switches stretched the projected dive toward 12 hours. Shaw's published plan described 19 bailout cylinders and 7 gas mixes for the contingency schedule. The redundancy was enormous because a direct ascent was impossible. Even after an emergency, he still had to breathe the correct gas and respect the decompression ceiling. The team expected Deon's remains to be essentially skeletal and to stay near the cave floor. Their concern was that pieces might separate, which was why Anne's bag mattered. But inside the dry suit, parts of the body had been preserved. When Shaw began to work, the remains did not stay quietly on the cave floor. They became buoyant and moved into his working space. There was another complication. Cave divers usually avoid unnecessary items on the head because anything can catch a line. For this mission, Shaw wore a helmet-mounted camera so the recovery could be documented. None of these details guaranteed disaster. Together, at 270 meters, they left almost no room for delay. On January 8, 2005, the team moved into position before sunrise. Deon Dreyer's parents waited near the water, believing their 10-year wait might finally end. At 6:15 a.m., Dave Shaw shook hands with Don Shirley, switched on his helmet camera, and descended into Boesmansgat. 13 minutes later, Don followed. Dave was expected to complete the recovery, leave the bottom on schedule, and meet him farther up the guideline. Dave reached the cave floor in about 11 minutes. He located Deon and opened the recovery bag, but the operation quickly unraveled. Deon's remains began to move, and a thin line from the old equipment drifted across Dave's workspace. The body, recovery bag, Dave's light, and the main guideline became entangled. Dave used scissors to cut himself free, but more line moved around him. His planned 5-minute working window passed. He abandoned the recovery and tried to leave. At approximately 270 meters, however, even breathing had become exhausting. The extreme pressure made the gas inside his rebreather unusually dense. As Dave pulled and cut, his breathing accelerated while his movements became less effective. Eventually they stopped. His light remained on. Investigators later concluded that the entanglement triggered a respiratory crisis. Dave could not breathe deeply enough to remove the carbon dioxide building inside his body. More effort produced more carbon dioxide, causing greater breathlessness, confusion, and exhaustion. The cycle ultimately led to unconsciousness. Above him, Don expected to meet Dave around 220 meters. Instead, he saw a single motionless light far below, after part of his electronic equipment imploded beyond 240 meters. Don turned back rather than risk a second fatality. During his ascent, Don became disoriented, vomited, and suffered a serious decompression injury. He still had hours of staged decompression ahead of him and remained underwater for approximately 13 hours before entering a recompression chamber. Dave had asked that nobody risk another life trying to recover him. But 4 days later, while a team removed ropes and equipment, Dave and Deon were found closer to the surface. They had risen together, connected by tangled line and buoyant equipment. Dave Shaw died trying to return Deon Dreyer to his parents. In the end, both divers were brought home. What you are about to see are the final moments of David Shaw, as recorded by his helmet camera.
As he submerges, the clock starts ticking. Don Shirley describes what happens underwater.
Okay, now Dave's going to move over to the entrance of the cave. You see how clear the water is already. The sounds you're hearing there are the divers below that's doing the filming. Dave's getting ready to go down now. Okay, the descent has begun. Now moving through the restriction, just checking that everything's okay with the computer. You see part of the cave there as we're moving through. This is the oxygen hanging at 6 meters. It's getting past all the clutter that's there. There's our cameraman. Everything's going good. We're moving quickly. Final check. Everything's good. Moving down now. Soon be coming to the roof. Just passing 22 meters. Everything going good. Okay, we're on the roof. You can see a bit of rock coming down from the roof there. Now we're in the clear. Now we're descending on the line. Running down the line quickly. Everything's going good. Final check. PPO2s are good. Moving down the line. My oxygen levels are right. My computers are good. Passing some of the stage cylinders. Lots of cylinders on this line. Dave's moving down very quickly now. He's helping himself go down. Running the line very quickly down. Breathing's good. Approach it. There we are on the bottom now, moving along. There's the big thick line from the down line. Okay, now we're coming to the small line which goes off to the body. Okay, Dave's working hard now. He's trying to save as much time as he can. And there we have Werner's dolphin. There's a dolphin that was put in the roof as a joke to Werner. Now it's deflated and gone all the way back down to the bottom. Looking, everything's good. 10 minutes into the dive, very quick descent. Everything's great. Now Dave's working hard. He's jogging. It's like jogging on the surface. So he's actually breathing quite heavily at 270 meters. You see how clear everything is. Nice bright light shining, can see everything happening. Right, getting ready for the body. Okay, Dave will be able to see Deon now. There's Deon's legs. Right, we're still on plan, everything is going good. We're working hard. Undo the bag and put it over the legs. Everything's good. Checking, everything's right. Breathing heavily, still jogging, still jogging. Okay, bit of silt, I'd expect that. Okay, undoing the bag and trying to slide it up the legs. Now, things are not to plan because the body is loose. It's not in the, it's no longer stuck in the mud. Everything is loose. The body's moving around with its cylinders. Dave's working hard, trying to work out what to do next. He's still checking all the gauges. He's breathing heavy, he's working hard. Now, this line is just getting everywhere because this body is floating. It's not stuck. Everything's moving. Right, light gets caught on the line there. Moving out the way. Still got a nice bright light. Moving up. Now, we can't put the bag over, so it's a case of just untangling the cylinders from the line here. You see, rushing, trying to get these scissors to cut. Because we were going to cut it out of the cylinders, but now everything is loose. This is a very sloping bottom, so Dave slipped here. Again, now he's coming back to the body. And you can see he's checking, making sure everything's right with his time. Time's getting short now. The time is nearly to the point where he needs to leave. Okay, good check. All the time checking, making sure he's okay, working at the same time. There's the line. This is a line we were worried about being loose, and there it is loose. Okay, we've now come to the end of our time now, and it's time to leave. Dave's decided he's going to leave. All on plan, everything's right. He's still working hard, everything's right. He's leaving. Okay, all on time, working hard. Quick check, make sure his gauges are right. Something seems to be stopping him now, and he's caught in the line. Okay, he's working hard trying to untangle himself. You can see the bag. Okay, there he goes, he's moving on again. Now, he's breathing very hard. It's getting quite difficult to do things. Good check on the gauge. Now, Dave's breathing would be getting quite heavy as he's trying to work his way out. And slowly, Dave would start to become incoherent, and then he would stop. But he was still moving out, and he was still working right up to the end. And what he found was he got caught up in the line. He was moving away, the body and everything was actually towing behind him. And he had to then try and untangle himself from that in a very restricted light position with a very high sort of breathing rate. And he basically succumbed to all the pressures that you've got at that sort of time. and his breathing slowly faded, and Dave passed away.
What we have just witnessed is difficult to watch because these were the final moments of a real person, a husband, father, friend, an explorer who hoped to bring closure to a family that had waited 10 years. Dave Shaw is remembered not only for the depth he reached, but for why he returned. He entered the darkness for someone he had never met and attempted a recovery few divers in the world could have undertaken. His final dive is also a reminder that preparation, experience, and advanced equipment cannot eliminate every danger. In extreme environments, courage can carry a person farther, but it cannot make them invincible. We also remember Deon Dreyer, his waiting family, and Don Shirley, who survived a dangerous ascent after realizing his friend would not return. These stories should be told not to glorify risk, but to understand the courage, decisions, and human consequences behind exploration. For more true stories of survival and exploration, subscribe to Xanzer Survival. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I'm Kyle. On behalf of everyone at Xanzer Survival, thank you for watching. Stay curious, stay prepared, and stay safe.